Well, good morning, Renewal.
Morning, Pastor David.
And good morning, live streamers from all over the world, in all places, in churches and hospitals and homes. We at Renewal welcome you. Let's welcome them. In our series today, looking at the life of Peter, we talk about what is the risky about being a Christian. And I want you to follow me as I read from Matthew 14:22 through 33 in the English Standard Version. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch, which is between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. And they said, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Don't be afraid." And Peter said to him, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, say walked on the water, and he came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, but he was. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "Peter, you have little faith. Why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Now, this incredible story that we read comes immediately after a mind-blowing miracle. From a young boy's packed lunch of small fish and a piece of bread, Jesus had multiplied so over 5,000 men, plus women and children, had a meal. Now, this came after Jesus was keen to teach disciples how to step out and take a risk. But it failed. He wanted them to have faith in his word, compassion for people, and the reality of a miracle. And that's why he said to them, "You feed them." And they missed that opportunity. What a wonderful thing. You see, when God comes and asks us to do what seems to be the impossible, it's for three reasons. It must be because there's a compassion for people. You can't serve people you don't love. E.g. the barber. There must be something in a compassion that drives you. And when Jesus said feed them, he was trying to generate a compassion. So the question is, do we see the need? Because Peter didn't. And then he was trying to teach them faith in his word. Jesus said, "You feed them." It was his word. Do we believe what God says to us? That's a big question today. And then the reality of the miracle. Do we receive a miracle? Do we believe in miracles, Christians? Many don't. Amen. And he was trying to teach them those three things. You feed them. Now, the crowd of maybe 7,000 to 10,000 had been listening to Jesus all day. And the disciples, feeling the strain, which we do in life, suggest this to Jesus. It's getting late. Send them away into the town and the city, because we don't have provision at Renewal for them at this moment. Now imagine, Jesus had just suggested that the disciples could have offered their own sandwiches. He didn't ask them to do what they hadn't got, but he said, use what you have got. Isn't that marvelous? A miracle starts when we give him what we have got, not what we haven't got. But he took a young boy with obedience of faith. I think of that young boy when he grew up. What must his life have been like? Started going out with this girl. She said, have you done anything great? He said, I've fed 10,000 on my packed lunch. And then as he grew up, Mum would say, go on, kids, ask your dad what he did when he was young. He wouldn't have got over this. That miracle changed his life. We don't hear of him again, but I gather he must have followed Jesus after that. Who wouldn't? True. You see, it was the boy's faith, not the disciples that day, that had been activated. Listen, faith is dormant until activated by obedience. Yes. Faith is dormant until activated by obedience. You can have all the faith in the world, but it is of nothing unless we're obedient to the will of God. Amen. What is concerning is Jesus did this a second time, but never asked them the second time. This time, 4,000 plus. This time, 7 baskets left over. The divine presence of God. 12 baskets before, the governance of God. 7 baskets, the personality of Christ. 4, the number of man. 3, the number of God. 7, Jesus. He was showing them in his 2 miracles that his governance, his rulership is over all things, and it's Christ who's doing it. Jesus was trying to teach them to take a risk. Engage not in blind faith. See, risk is not doing stupid things, it's doing faithful things. Yes, see, faith is not blind. We do not engage in blind faith. Notice he had commanded them. Hebrews 11 teaches that faith is a substance, a tangible evidence of things not seen but hoped for. When God commands it, it's not blind faith, it's seeing beyond the natural. Is there anybody in the house this morning? It's seeing beyond the natural. See, if God hasn't said it, we mustn't do it. Because that's when we sink. He was trying to teach them. You feed them. See, faith is not predisposing God's will. It's obeying the direct command of his will. Now, it's not saying, I think God would want me to do this. It's, what is the Spirit saying to the church? We're Pentecost Sunday today. Yes. In the calendar, it's when we celebrate the Holy Spirit came to actually give us direction. Right. Jesus needs to enlarge their faith and go beyond the boundaries of logic. Churches can't just be run by logic. No. Thank you. True. Who's preaching here, me or you? Oh, sorry. I agree with you. Oh, that's okay. Where's my other one? Oh, this is one. See, Matthew records this incredible event. But it's interesting because Mark tells us why. Mark never mentions Peter in the water. Same story. That's interesting. You'd think anybody walking on water, everybody talk about it. Mark doesn't mention it. He mentions Jesus walking on the water, doesn't mention Peter. Why is that? Because Mark tells us the truth of why Jesus had to do it. It's fascinating. You must read more than one gospel. Matthew records an incredible event. Mark tells us why. Let's listen to Mark. The disciples lacked a depth of faith. This is why Jesus had to do this. It had no risk value. Their faith had no risk value. Send them away is what they said. When the children came to Jesus, go away. There was no risk value. Mark then reveals a secret that we need to understand to see Peter's actions. Why did Jesus make the disciples go immediately without him to the opposite side of the vast lake? He had to show them that without him they could do nothing, but with him they could do all things. Jesus remained to both say goodbye to the multitude. Isn't that wonderful? 10,000 people, and Jesus wasn't driven off in a chariot to his hotel to rest. He said, you go off, I'll say goodbye to them. People mattered to Jesus. Yes. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the food. Thanks for all your attitude. See you again sometime. You can imagine him on the door, can't you? 10,000 people. God bless you. Nice to see you. It must have been because now it took him till the evening to go up a mountain and pray. Just shows that Jesus was a man of compassion, man of word, man of miracles. It's no good saying that you're being called to the ministry if you don't like people. If you only like preaching, all you are is just a lecturer. Why did Jesus make them do that? Jesus remains to say goodbye, but also to pray for them. Up in the mountain from that height, he sees this vast, this lake was not like Windmill, it's a sea. He sees that they'd reached the middle of a storm, and immediately hit them. And they'd been rowing for hours. These were men of all different professions, but guided by fishermen. They were all fishermen. So those that started seeing the storm that were not used to the sea panicked first. And then we got to the stage where the fishermen and Peter panicked as well, because this was getting now unbelievable. And in this part of the world, storms can come just immediately. And Jesus is high on a mountain, and he looks and he sees, and it's getting dark. Mark sees this. He walks on the water. It's getting dark. It's 3 to 6 in the morning, early hours, fourth watch, Roman time scale. He walks on the water, and as he draws near and would have passed by, notice, he would have passed by, says Mark, he would have been, unless there had been a response. Do you know, Jesus is here today, and he's walking through this church, and unless you respond, you could miss him. He wants to do a miracle in somebody's life today. But he's not going to stand there and wait and look at his watch and get your attention. He'll walk by. All through the Bible, as Jesus walked by, they touched the hem of his garment. He didn't stop and wait till they came and touched him. Do you know, I believe God wants to touch somebody today in this meeting. He's going to walk by right through the meeting. Then you have to recognize him. Take your eyes off your problem and put your eyes on Christ. Let's see what happens here. As he passed by, unless there was a response from the boat, have we been in a situation in the midst of sudden storms of life when Jesus passes by our boat? We never noticed him. We need to identify him, and then we have to discern, is it a spiritual aspiration or is it Christ? Peter, who's so impetuous, actually uses some common sense. It is understandable that in times like these, they felt troubled. Oh, I bet they felt troubled. Ever felt troubled? You put your hand up to say some of you are in a valley at the moment. Ever been on a mountain when it's snowy and you don't know how to put your foot right? Folks, life is full of problems. Yeah. I've told you many times when I was in football, I had a notice on my door that said, smile, things could be worse. And underneath it said, I did smile and they did get worse. That's not a negative statement. Sometimes things do go wrong. Yeah. And they go in sessions of wrong. They're just like buses, they come in threes. Have you noticed that? Any bus drivers here? Anybody watching us on? But this is the reason why Jesus had to do this. This is the most frightening statement I've read in the Bible for many years. Mark says they were frightened, thought it was a ghost, because they did not believe in the miracle of the loaves and fishes. Pardon? They'd just taken part in a great miracle, and their hearts were hardened, and they didn't accept it because it revealed their lack of faith. You say, I find that hard to believe, Dave. Do you? Do you? I was preaching in Lincoln just a few years back, 5,000 people in the meeting. And as I was praying for the sick, I said, God's told me only to pray for cancer today. And as I said that, the others turned away to walk away. And as I looked through the crowd, there was this man in his 20s, doubled up in a wheelchair. And as they turned him away, God said, but not him. And I pointed just through the crowd and I went, tonight! The story goes this: he was a fitness coach, married, had a baby, and suddenly lost all his energy, and they didn't know what it was, and they sent him to America, and it's a very, very, very rare muscular disease. And now he was confined to a hospital bed in his front room, and when his wife had to take him out in a wheelchair, their baby used to be laid on his lap. He had no strength at all. And he turned around in despair because they'd brought his family to this camp, to this conference. And his wife was looking after the baby, and the friend had brought him. And in fact, his pastor, his doctor, was one of the leaders sitting on the platform, his general practitioner. And through this vast crowd of cancer, I just said, in the name of Jesus. The story goes on then. As soon as I said that, the power of God hit him. He leapt out of his wheelchair. He ran round the full circumference of the building, ran to the tent, and stood in the doorway like this. His wife turned around and screamed. The next night he was there at the conference with his child round his neck, dancing in front of the people. And when he went home, the Lincolnshire newspaper picked it up, front page. But look at this. They went to his neighbours and said, is this genuine? Oh, yes, they said. We felt terribly sad for this family. He's in a hospital bed, has to be fed, his wife has to push him. And now he runs past the house with his child on his shoulders. But we personally don't believe in miracles. And that was the disciples. Yeah, we did see him feed 5,000 out of just a little boy's package. Yeah, we did see and 7,000 and 10,000. And we did have baskets left over, but personally, we're not into that. You can be a Christian in this meeting today and not be into miracles. The reason wasn't because of the miracle, it was their lack of faith. They wouldn't take a risk. So number one, when they saw Jesus, they were troubled. You know, when faith is limited, purpose confused, obedience challenged, we're troubled. Let me say that again. When our faith is limited, our purpose is confused, and our obedience is challenged, yes, we are troubled. And there comes time in our life when there's trouble in our life. There may be trouble ahead, and there is, because we lack obedience and faith and obedience. And it's only these things that keep us in the faith of God.
Amen.
Mary made a very great statement. I have it written in my Bible, and I put it in most of my Bible. She didn't say a lot, but she said this: whatever he tells you to do, do it. But make sure it's him that's telling you. So number one, they were troubled. Number two, they became greatly amazed. See the difference between troubled and greatly amazed. When they saw the actions of Peter, it was one of their own taking a risk. And we can, by our actions and perseverance, inspire others to do the same. When they see one of our own being blessed, you know, when you see a big televangelist coming from a big nation with all his entourage, you think that's him. But when you see your next door neighbor do something, you say, I can do that. If they can do that, if they can believe for that, I can do that. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And the Bible says they became greatly amazed in themselves, not in the miracle, not in the church, not in others, from one to many. Each one of them had a dramatic personal encounter. Yes, we can corporately be blessed in our church, yet we need a personal encounter so that we know that we are not taking a risk. We are just doing something that's above normality. See, a risk to us is a normal to God. Yeah. Anybody in the church here that agrees with that? I took a risk, you know. I stepped out in faith and prayed for the sick, and Jesus said, that's what you're supposed to do. And, you know, I witnessed to the barber. I said, well, that's what you're supposed to do. And I took food to my neighbour who was sick, and I cooked for her. And he said, well, that's what you're supposed to do. You're not taking any risk there. Well, they may have rejected it. Well, you'd have had more to eat that night, wouldn't you? And if your barber hadn't liked it, you'd have been a skinhead. And then number 4, they were blessed beyond measure. You see, the limitation of their faith had been removed when they saw Peter walking on the water. They believed that the Christ that could do exceeding and abundantly more than they ever thought was in the boat with them. You see, their faith was limited because he wasn't with them. But he promised us, I'll never leave you or forsake you. They woke him up one day and said, carest thou not that we perish? There was a storm. Don't we do that? But let us look at the impulsive Peter for a moment. He cut a man's ear off. Here. Jesus said, put it back where you found it. So he picked it up and stuck it on. It was a miracle, wasn't it? I mean, who'd want Peter on the team? He was a handful, wasn't he? John was rowing with him one day. John was the sophisticated one, the one that wrote Revelation that nobody understands, you know, very clever. And he was rowing one day, and Peter was down to his underpants because they were fishing. And John saw Jesus on the shore. You should read the Bible, it's hilarious. And he went, Peter? Yeah. I think that's Jesus over there. Where? Over there. Ooh, if I was you, would put your coat on and look smart when you meet him. So the Bible says he put his coat on and jumped in the water. Big pimple head. He swims to the water with his coat on. Gets out and goes, hello, Jesus. It's dripping wet. And Jesus says, all right, take your coat off and dry it, Peter. Sit down and have breakfast. This is the type of man we're talking about here. Cuts ears off. Jumps in the water to see Jesus. Would die before allowing Jesus to die on the cross. Would die before he denied him. Yet did. Yet the same man, after walking on the water, preached and saw 3,000 saved, was the pastor of the first church in Jerusalem, took the gospel to the Gentiles, and chose to be crucified upside down. What changed him? I'll tell you. Do you want to know?
Yes.
See, it takes risk takers to see the kingdom increase. Safe people may be nice, yet they don't see many miracles. Peter's seeing this image in the midst of the storm, wanting this time not to rush into a dangerous action as he normally would do, but he tests the authenticity of the vision. Very wise. How do you test what God is telling you to do, Peter? He reasons as an experienced fisherman. It is impossible to walk on water. True or false? True or false? True or false? True. You can't walk on water. If you can, come visit me. Do you know, I know a pastor in America who was very wise in counselling people. One of the Connect groups phoned him up one day and they said, we've got real problems in our Connect group. One of the leaders has filled the bath with water and he's teaching people how to turn it into wine. Because he said, if they have faith, they will do it. And the pastor thought, now, do I bring him in and slap him with a Bible? Do I kick him out of the church? Or how do I handle this? So he phoned him up and said, be great to catch up. Shall we have a meal at the restaurant by the beach? Oh, thanks, Pastor. He said, it's on me. Oh, that's wonderful, Pastor. So had this lovely breakfast, big stack-up American breakfast, and he said, keeps looking at his watch. And the guy says to the pastor, have you got to be somewhere else? He says, no, I'm just waiting for high tide. And when he got to high tide, he walked on the beach and he said, right, take your shoes off. He said, why? He said, you're going to walk on the water. He went, oh, what? He says, you're going to walk on the water. He said, I can't walk on water. He said, why? He said, because God's not told me to. He said, he never told you to turn the water into wine either, did he? True. Don't do what he never told you to do. Right. And so Peter, this is the interesting thing, Peter never asked to walk on the water. Or he did. No, he didn't. The question was, if you are the Christ, command me to come to you on the water. The most important thing was not, let me walk on the water like you, because that would be a good one putting on my CV. It was, where you are, I want to be. Did you hear that? Yeah. Where you are, said Peter, if you are the Christ, if this comes from you, I want to be where you are, and if it means walking on the water, let it be so. But I want to be with you. Unless your motive in life is to be with him, whatever you're looking for is not good. Lord, if only I could do miracles, no good. Lord, if I was just great at preaching, no good. If I was really the best faith builders leader we got, no good. What you should say is, Lord, that I may be with you. Because once you're with him, he can do anything with you. He can turn you into anything you can't be. I'm a witness of that. Once you lose wanting to be with him and just wanting to do for him, you become a doer and not a person who loves him. So Peter, what a great change in him. Lord, if it's you, let me come to you. The miracle is not walking on water, ladies and gentlemen, or if you're watching by live stream, that's not the miracle. The miracle is being where Christ is. Amen. A miracle is only a means of knowing him. A miracle is only a means of knowing him. Notice, to be a risk taker is not blindly jumping into the water. There is no blind faith. Remember, faith only sees beyond logic. We don't jump to prove a point of faith. He waited for a divine call. Come. I didn't want to come to Solihull. You all know that if you've been in the church many years. I waited for the word, come. And then I wanted to leave, and I waited for the word, stay. And then I wanted to go on forever, and I waited till hand over. And now I'm free man. I am where I should be. I am what I could be. Why? Because I'm listening to God. Have I walked on water? Not literally, spiritually, yes. So as we come towards a close, it all worked until Peter took his eyes off Christ and put them on the circumstances. Oh, don't we just do that? He then began to sink. Anybody done that? His cry was, Lord, save me. He caused the problem. Haven't you noticed that all the problems God gets us out of, we've caused? Oh, like kids, isn't it? You tell them what to do something, they run back to you, Mommy, you shouldn't have done it. Oh, Mommy, shouldn't have done it. I'll go to Daddy then. Daddy! Your mommy said you shouldn't have done it. Oh, forget it. Jesus said to him, held him by the hand, and he said, Peter, your faith's very little, lad. Well, that's great. He never had any before he got out of the boat. He didn't believe in the miracle. Now he's got faith, but it's little. See, little faith can be built on. No faith, there's impossibilities. Amen. Because he said to one man who said, I've only got little faith, he said, give me the little bit then. So when he holds Peter, he doesn't rebuke him and say, oh, you've only got little faith, you peasant. He just said, you've gone from no faith to little faith. Come on, Pete. Trust me with big faith. And of course, Peter did. 3,000 saved. Many people healed. Roman centurion changed. First pastor of the church of Jerusalem. His faith increased and increased and increased. It all started from when God pulled him out of the water. You know, you're tempted to look at the circumstance. There's an illness with you or your family. There's a financial situation, problem at work or in your marriage. And it's understandable why your eyes are going to be fixed on that all the time. You're going to sink. I've got news for you. You are going to sink. That's not a curse. That's a fact. Watching on live stream, you will sink. We used to sing a song in the old days, you know, us old ones. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. There's the difference. As we come to a close this morning and Andy comes back, what can we learn? Number one, Peter. He challenged the validity of the situation. If you are the Lord, command me. To be a risk taker, to step in faith, we must test the vision. Is this from God? Is it really the Lord in this situation? It's best to wait for a while. Peter is not rushing into danger. Well done, Peter. Thank you. Didn't just jump out the boat and say, save me. He said, if you are the Lord, you call me. My God. Some of you are having to pray that prayer even today. Number two, he committed himself in the midst of a personal and corporate storm. To step out takes courage when things threaten to kill you. Anybody can step out when it's going well. You can all go down to the sea. You know, a lifeboat's only a lifeboat because it's a lifeboat. And they're made so that when they go upside down, they can come back, but sometimes they don't. Can you trust God in the storm as well as in the quiet time? And number three, he conquered the law of nature and logic by faith. Miracles actually defy logic. But let me tell you this, miracles don't produce faith. Faith produces miracles. Because if miracles produce faith, they'd have had faith for the 5,000. Faith produces miracles. All things are possible to those who believe. And then lastly, and not preachers lastly, but definitely lastly, he compromised his faith, concentrated on the problem rather than the solution. Yet in that action, he received the hand of salvation. Jesus did not let him drown. He's not going to let you. Let's stand. Let's close our eyes. Thank you, Peter. And you remember, Mark never mentioned Peter at all. He said the problem was we had no faith in the feeding of the 5,000. And that's why Jesus had to do this, to get us to take risks. We wouldn't take risks in feeding the 5,000. He didn't ask us over the 4,000. We sent the children away. He wanted to show us that we could have compassion. We could have dependency on the word. And that we could believe in miracles. And so he walked on the water in the midst of all danger. And it's Peter, oh, impetuous Peter, big mouth Peter. Oh, aren't we there somewhere, or is it just me? Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. Come, Peter. Take a risk. You're not going to drown. My God, no life jackets in those days. In the water he goes. Everything's going well. Then he hears the wind blowing. He can see the waves in front of him coming up high, and suddenly he takes his eyes off Jesus. Oh my God, don't we do it? Haven't we done it? Have you ever done it? And then you wonder why you're wet and frightened and feel you're drowning, your water's in your mouth. But suddenly, oh my God, what a love, what love he has bestowed upon us. He puts his arms down and pulls us out. I wonder which situation you're in today. Perhaps you don't know him. Perhaps you're watching by live stream and you're sitting there in the hospital bed, or you're sitting there in another part of the world and you don't know him. You've never taken that risk by saying, Lord, I commit myself to you. Lord, I come to you. Let my life be changed, renewed. Maybe you've never done that before. You've never taken the risk. But say this, if you really are Christ today, if you really are the way, the truth, and the life, command me to come to you. And Jesus said, they that come unto me, I will in no wise cast out. There's an assurance for you today that here in June, in the early part of June 2019, you can be saved today. He shouted out, save me, save me. And some of you need saving because you are drowning. You're drowning in depression and sorrow and emptiness and drug addiction and other addictions in your life. There's been disappointment and there's been brokenness in your life. You need to be saved. Peter said, save me. Will you say that today? Quietly in your own voice or loudly if you want to. If you need God to do that miracle in your life, shout it out now, save me. Maybe there's a sickness now. And he's asking you to get out of the boat and you feel you're sinking. And there's a sickness, shout, save me. Shout it louder. Maybe the issues in your life are too personal to talk to people about. You need saving, shout, save me. Maybe you lack the faith that God's given you the opportunities in the past to feed the people and you've not done it. God's not rebuking you. He's come to you like Peter and he's showing him what faith is. You need faith to grow in your life. Shout, save me. When we've had communion and Ben's come and led us in that, during that time at our prayer points, which are the two areas which look like great big iPhones, I'm going to ask you that if you shouted, save me, before or after communion, go there and let the team pray a prayer of blessing on you. I'm going to pray a blessing on you now, the blessing of Peter. Lord, I want to thank you for Peter because he's there, warts and all. He shows us his weaknesses, he shows us his strength. But this time he had the courage to say, if it be you, Lord, command me. And I'm praying over all these people today that, Lord, in their situations, let them hear the command of God upon their life. Let them hear the call of God upon their life. And let them step by faith, because by faith it is more firm than it is by presumption. Let them not look at the problem, let them look at the solution. And his name is Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. Give him a clap offering.